Hi, good afternoon. Welcome to the second day of the Book Industry Summit. Our first session this afternoon is revenues from the book fair market. Our speakers are Adam David, Paolo Herras, and Tinette Capistrano. This session will be moderated by Ms. Nida Ramirez. Adam David is the co-founder of Better Living Through Xeroxography, a small press publishing outfit that has been organizing lectures, discussions, and expos focused on independent publishing and art activism since 2010. He has been making books, zines, and comics since the year 2000. Paolo Herras is a co-founder of Komiket, a Filipino comics and art market that helps nurture the local comics community. He is also an author, film director, and lecturer. Tinette Capistrano is the vice president of Primetrade Asia, one of the leading exhibition and conference organizers in the country. Primetrade has handled the Manila International Book Fair, the country's largest annual book fair, for the last 3 decades. Nida Ramirez has been the manager and all-around mother dragon of this Prince publishing arm since it started in 2001 and until it retires in 2020. So anyway, can I call our speakers and our moderator to the stage? Please occupy the seats here in front. And of course, dear audience, let's give them all a round of applause. I'll just talk.
Good afternoon, everyone. I see a lot of familiar faces. So I will talk about how you can generate more revenue at the Manila International Book Fair. Okay, for those who are not familiar with the fair, a few facts about it. First, it is the largest running book fair in the Philippines. From 100 booths, we are now occupying over 500 booths. From one floor in the Philippine Trade Training Center, we now occupy 1.5 floors of the SMX Convention Center. And it is also the premier venue where B2B and B2C events in the printed and digital content industry gather. It is also the avenue for foreign and local publishers to touch base with their markets. And it is the best vehicle to test new products, new publications, and new services because of the number of people who come. Sometimes you think you already know who your target market is, but when you're at an event, at a fair, you will meet somebody who you will discover, hey, this is a new market for me. So before you join the MIBF, for those who haven't joined, these are some factors which you should consider. First, are your company objectives aligned with the MIBF's objectives? No, and then is our target market the same as your target market? As you know, we have different markets. From the weekdays, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, we cater more to the academic market. In fact, a number of booksellers pick up their clients to attend the book fair. This is traditional among them. And then, what are the participation costs? First, how much will it cost to join the fair? You have your basic participation fee. And then, you have your cost of goods for sale. Your marketing costs. You know, the panels earlier discussed engagement. Gone are the days wherein you can just have a book fair, put your books there on the shelf, and it will sell. It's not like that anymore. You need to create the buzz, just like what everybody else said earlier. If you don't do that, you will not be as successful. Then your marketing costs. Your personnel costs. This is a lot because you have to give them allowances, transportation, food, overtime, especially on Sundays. And there are times when you will have to pay for night differential pay, which is a lot, because our SMX booked their venue back to back to back. So because of the nature of our exhibit items, we need to have overnight ingress for like 2 nights. And then taxes and licenses. You know, in the past, this was never a problem for us. But lately, every year, there are new licenses and taxes to be paid for. Like in the past, we didn't have to pay separately for fire. We didn't have to pay for cleaning. It was all bunched up. But now, BIR is separate, municipal tax is separate. The municipal tax of the fair is different from the municipal taxes that we pay for you. So every time you join the fair, we also pay for temporary business tax for each exhibitor, which is part of your fee, which you don't probably realize. And that's a lot. And then food, because you have staff, you feed them there. And as you know, we are bound by certain catering restrictions, or else you have to eat out, and it takes a while, takes a long time for them to come back. So these are the basic costs. I'm sure you have more. So once you total it, is it worth it for you to join? For many, yes. I've seen companies who would get 1 booth. Now they have 24 booths. I've seen like 2 booths grow into 18 booths. So I guess it must be worth it. So just to give you another thing, no, we have more than 200 exhibitors. In the past, when we were starting, we only had like 50. Now we have more than 500 booths. And lately, foreign publishers are recognizing the book fair. They actually write us already, and they actually complain, why is it we only get back to them when all the prime spaces are sold? So this is the profile of who joins us, no? 41% are publishers. And then we broke down the booksellers into trade and academic. So 19% are trade booksellers. Some are academic, 16%. Then we have 1% of magazine subscriptions, 1% publishers representatives, 1% knowledge information channels. These are like Instituto Cervantes, ganon. And then electronic references, that yun lang yung binibenta nila, 4%. School and office supplies is a growing market. That's why, if you notice, we're separating it. Next year, we're gonna brand it a stationery fair. And then others. So these are the visitors who visit us every year. It's all in the website, so I will not go through them one by one. And this would be more interesting for you, so you can plan your participation next year for those who I know are joining, and for those who intend to join. So 98% of the visitors said they met their objectives in visiting the fair. Now, what are those objectives? Basically, to buy books. That's number 1. Who visits the fair? 82% are female, only 12% are male. So I guess women have more buying power, or shopping talaga. Obvious. And then 90% are single, and 10% are married. But then again, our population is small, no? Of the 160,000, it's like 1,000 plus only. But in the past, surveys we had, it's more or less like that also. So, in terms of educational attainment, 63% are college graduates. And then you have high school students next. Because of the school tours, we have school tours from Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. And then we have a sprinkling of elementary graduates, master's degree holders, and a very tiny fraction for the doctorate degree holders. So, by and large, you can say we have an educated visitor database. Monthly income, 35% earn less than 10,000. So I'm assuming these are the students, no? And then 48% earn between 10,000 and 30,000 per month. And 11% earn 30 to 50,000, and 50,000 pesos and above, 6%. So that is the market. Monthly income of the people who go. So as I mentioned earlier, the number one reason for going to the book fair is to buy books, magazines, or journals. 17% said they will avail of discounts. That's why they're there. 4% went to just attended the special events. 3% said they went to look for new titles, and others are just like, others means like they went with a friend, they met up with people, so na inconsequential things. So majority of the 95% respondents visit the book fair to purchase, and most of them met their objectives. This is just a snapshot. And you will notice, Facebook is our number one vehicle. And that is why we always ask you to give us posts, and we don't charge you for it, mind you. So I hope you take advantage of that next time. And then, so imagine, 71% is Facebook. Then, of course, we boost, and I know you boost, but in our survey, so I was pretty much surprised because I thought Instagram would be it. And then comes friends. 12% found out about the book fair through their friends. And what's surprising is press and photo releases are only 2%. So people don't read paper anymore. And then in the past, we would, no, except for last year. This year, we didn't have those big banners anymore because the year before, I think only 1% saw it. So it was depressing. You spend so much. So we channeled our marketing to press releases and digital. We also have blogs. We hired bloggers. And then this question was requested by BDAP. Did you visit the MIBF for a Filipino author or event? And it's nice to know that 54% said yes. So now that you know your market, this is the market we have, make sure that they are your market. Like I said, institutional buyers come to the MIBF on weekdays, and the general public visits after office hours. But Friday, Saturday, and Sunday are the heaviest days. In fact, there are many instances, if you notice, you see us outside because SMX will not allow more people into the halls. This is also the reason why before we would have our anime convention at the same time. But it cannot happen anymore because both events will suffer. Our anime event gets about 7,000 to 10,000 a day. MIBF gets about the same. But this year rather, was pretty much outstanding. We had like 46,000, the highest in one day. Thanks to everybody. So what I'm saying here is, if you are into academic selling, and in the weekdays, you focus your products on schools. In the weekend, you focus on families, on the sale. Lalo na, especially on Saturday and Sunday, everybody, I hear them as they pass. They want to look for a bargain. So that's when you put your bargain books out, things that you want to get rid of on the Saturday and Sunday. And also, the weekend is when you reach the unknown because many exhibitors have events. The event doesn't have to be expensive. It can be in your booth. It can just be like a caricature thing. You don't have to spend and hire an entertainer or whatever. And then you also have to make sure you have the proper facilities to process payments. Sometimes people get turned off because the store has no change money. They don't have credit card facilities. And nowadays, you can actually tie up with V-Money, Peso Pay, GCash to increase your sales, no? And again, use special events as drivers of sales. Many of you already are doing it. The others who aren't, I suggest you do because it will improve your bottom line better. Some people say that in one special event, they can get like covered na daw yung one day nila sa fair. And that a special event is like what, 2 hours? And they say, yung sales nila sa one day nakukuha sa event. So, think about it. Make your booths attractive yet efficient, meaning don't stuff everything. People should be comfortable. No, if your booth is small, then you have a, let's say, a demo, and then people cannot enter anymore. So, what's the point, diba? Then it will translate to losses on your part because people couldn't enter your booth anyway. And then shout out your products and services to your target market and use the proper channel to reach them. For example, millennials don't read newspaper. Gen Z, Gen X, Y, wala. They already look down at their phones. However, if your target market are older people, educational institutions, government, you need to write them. You need to write them because that's what their bosses will look for. So from our survey, 99% are certain to attend the MIBF next year. So in 1990, when we started, we had 27,000 people. This year, we had over 160,000 people attend. So you can see the growth rate. And you can see the multitude of people whom you can reach. Although not everybody is for you. So these are the featured events. Next year, we're bringing back our Digitech Fair. We're hoping to get the entire SMX this time. So hopefully we can partner with all of you. Of course, we're making Pop Hub bigger. That's for to reach the millennials and the comic book market. So, our book fair next year is on September 16 to 20. I'm sorry for the shameless plug, but I guess can't help it. And for inquiries, the numbers are there. And of course, Bernadette is there. I guess parang half of the people in this room know her. And so, thank you. If you have questions, we can talk about it later.
Gandang hapon. Salamat sa pag-attend sa panel na to. Ano? Paano ba? Press lang yung... Okay, thank you. Or hindi ba siya gumagaling sa PDF na pinadala ko? Wala, ayaw yata gumana. Hindi naka-on yun. Hindi naka-open yung PDF. Okay. So ako po si Adam David. Tumakbo na talaga siya. Ayan. So babalik tayo sa umpisa. Ayan. So isa ako sa mga co-organizer ng event na to, yung Better Living Through Xeroxography, yung pangalan niyan. So ito ay sign na pinaskill sa BLTX Davao na nangyari siya a few years ago. So ito yung pundasyon ng event namin. Ang tawag siya na zines. Ginamit na namin bilang catch-all na term for anything na small press na hindi na pinublish without institutional support. So basically, sariling sikap. Yung paglimbag, yung pagsalat, yung paglimbag, yung distribution, everything. Tapos, so yan ako na yung ginawa ko yung sign ng mga 2 events ago. So, ito lang po muna. Nag-umpisa siya, may sinulat akong manifesto, tapos pinublish siya sa Philippines Free Press noong 2009, so 10 years ago. Tapos, basically, in-outline doon ang mga paraan kung paano baguhin ang modes of production ng panitikan sa Pilipinas. So mostly ang focus ay panitikan, di ba? Lit with a big L basically. Tapos ang ilan sa mga in-outline doon ay literary patricide. So wag pagtangkilik sa padrino system, wag pagtangkilik sa palangka, sa graphic, sa yung mga award-giving body na yan. So ignore lahat ng yan. Kasi ang essence ng pagsusulat at paglilimbag ay communication, although artful na communication. Pero yun yung punto. So yung maraming kritisismo na nakuha yung manifesto. Yung isa doon ay kung ano lang ba siya, kung all blather lang ba, yun yung sinabi doon. So syempre magandang hamon yan para sa maraming tao. At isa ako doon sa mga yan na kasi ako yung nagsulat, no? So ako yung hinamon doon. So sabi ko, sige, patunayan natin kasi ang susi para sa maraming bagay, para magbago sa mundo, ay hindi daldal lang kundi praxis, diba? So practice what you preach. So the year after nun, ginawa namin yung unang event na. So yung poster doon sa kaliwa, yun yung poster na ginawa para sa unang event. So 16 na small press publishers ng time na yun. So nag-umpisa siya na basically kung sino yung kakilala ng mga main organizers. So ako yung main organizer pero may mga kasama akong iba pa doon na may iba doon mga student org, may iba doon mga matagal na rin na publisher na small press. Tapos nag-umpisa doon. So ambagan, may nirent kaming isang video okay bar sa Project 4 sa Cubao na pangalan ng Ilyongs. Tapos yung renta doon ay parang 10,000 lang, something like that. So so mga around 500 pesos lang per table yung per person, per seller yung ginawa namin. Tapos dun sa pagrenta dun sa lugar pa isang buong gabi yun, mga around 7 hanggang 12 o'clock ay may beer na nakasama, may chicken lollipops na kasama, mga ganyan. So dilagay lang namin sila sa gitna, tapos lahat libre yung pagkain sa kayo. Hanggang maubos yung mga bote ng beer. 100, kaya lang sulat dyan first 100 bottles of beer ay free. Kaya sulat dyan. Tapos, so yung isang thing na ginawa namin nun ay kapag kasama ka na magbebenta doon, ang kailangan gawin ay i-advertise mo siya doon sa paraan, doon sa basically doon sa audience niyo, sa paraan na kayo yung bahala. So walang standard na sizes ng poster or typography or anything na ganun. Talagang kung paano ka magbenta ng libro nyo, ng comics nyo, ng zine nyo, ganun yung paraan na gamitin nyo sa media channels na accessible para sa inyo. Yung poster dun sa kanan naman ay yun yung mga around siguro 6 years later after nung una. Yung una naming all women and queer na expo and forum. Diyan mga around mga 30 to 40 na sellers. So ganun rin 500 lang yung bayad dun sa kada seller. Tapos lahat yan mapupunta for expenses for the event na madalas ay nasa 10,000 to 14,000 pesos. So ito yung mga naging event. So hindi na kontento sa pagbebenta lang. Yung isang napansin namin dun sa unang gabi ay nag-uusap yung mga magkakatabing mga seller. Tapos pag tinitingnan nila yung trabaho ng isa't isa, nagtatanungan sila parang saan mo pinaprint yan? Ano yung ginawa mong effect dito? Photoshop ba ginamit mo, InDesign, etc. So yung second event, ginawa namin ng forum tungkol sa book production. So nagkaroon kami isang buong araw na parang ganito, may mga panel, tapos magsasalita, may ilang mga assigned na mga tao na pag-uusapan yung proseso nila sa paggawa basically. So nagkaroon na ng ganong discussion. Tapos mga 4 years after so mga 2015 something like that, yeah. Nagsulat ako ng isa pang manifesto kasi yung isang napansin, yung isa naming gustong patunayan ay yung ideya ng expo ay rich enough na kapag tinanggal mo siya mula sa sentro nito, which is Quezon City, Project 4, Cubao, at kaming mga organizer, ay mabubuhay ito kahit sa may lagay, kahit sa may siya. Pero para i-facilitate yung parang palaganap ng ideya na yun, ng meme na yun, ay ginawa tong manifesto na to na basically kung paano ka pwede mag-stage ng sarili niyong small press expo sa lugar nyo. So may outline dyan. Tabingi siya kasi bond paper, short bond paper na print out na flyer na naka-fold sa gitna. So pag tinurn niya yan, may basically troubleshooting yung parang determine kung ano yung problema dun sa lugar. Tapos maghanap ng mga kasama para gawa ng solusyon yung problema. Tapos pag nagawa na ng solusyon, ipalaganap yung solusyon na yan para sa mga ibang mga lugar, mga tao na may ganun rin na problema. In so many words. So nung dinistribute namin yan, may mga kumagat. So Davao, 2015 to 2016. Hindi ako sure. Davao. Tapos Baguio. Tapos Naga. So yung isang buong taon na yon, nung may mga kumagat na dun sa concept, nagkaroon kami ng isang buong expo na simultaneous Naga, Baguio, saka Cubao, so CBO. So yan, December 4 nung time na yan. Tapos nung the year after, na rin CDO, nakisama na rin. So yun yung ad para doon na para sa amin, at least kami yung gumawa. So yun, BLTX Small Press Expo mula Davao hanggang Baguio, south to north. Tapos ito yung last year lang na. So mapapansin niyo pa shifting yung mga venue kasi yung nangyayari diyan kahit na may mga contact kami ng organizers dun sa mga ibang mga lugar. Pareho lang namin yan na mga na 2-3 tao yung main organizers. So rin yan kasi nga ginagawa lang namin to ng walang tulong mula sa kahit anong institusyon. So ginagawa yung organizing in between jobs na karamihan sa amin ay mga guro, karamihan sa amin ay mga rumaraket sa design, sa gumagawa ng mga comics. So yung pag-organize ay nangyayari lang sa gitna ng between jobs basically. Pero sa lagay na yan, madalas nangyayari yung mga event namin 3 times a year. So minsan may tulad nito next year, meron kami sa La Union at Baguio. Magkasunod siya January 11 to 15. So kung nandun kayo, magpagkita tayo. So 11 to 15, meron kami event doon. Tapos normally summer meron rin. Tapos itong paparating na papakita ko mamaya yung information. Yung December namin na expo. So walang kumakagat sa Visayas for some reason. Kaya yun yung joke dyan. Kasi yun. So yung ED namin na tungkol sa book production, naisipan namin na gawin rin namin tungkol sa content, tungkol sa politika. So ito yung una namin ginawa, nasa 2012 ito nun. Kasi yung isang napansin namin nung nag-attend kami ng mga Comic-Con ng time na yan, ay wala masyadong mga babaeng gumagawa ng comics. Tapos at least walang out na queer na creators. So para medyo ma-stimulate yung conversation tungkol doon, nag-organize kami ng isang talk tungkol doon. So sa Women's Studies, sa UP Diliman nangyari. So ako yung nag-drawing ng naghahalikan na Batman and Robin. Tapos ito yung isang pinublish namin na publication may mga akda ng mga women migrant workers. So mga dating OFW, nag-hook up kami with an organization via NBDB actually, yun yung nag-umpisa, yung Batis Aware. So pumunta kami doon para kinuha kami, nag-inquire sila kung paano pwedeng mag-workshop ng mga akda nila. So poetry, fiction, and essay. Tapos tungkol sa experience nila, madalas tungkol sa experience na may mga iba doon na tumutulaan yung langgam, mga paro-paro, ganun. Pero karamihan ay tungkol sa karanasan nila bilang migrant workers, mga OFW. Karamihan sa kanila galing sa Japan. So yung nung 80s, 90s sila yung mga Japayuki na as we used to call them derogatorily. So tungkol sa mga kwento ng abuse sa kanila, kwento ng maraming mga kwento, maraming karanasan na first time nilang actually i-share sa ibang tao. Kahit yung pamilya nila hindi alam na yung mga nangyari sa kanila ay mga yon. So may mga iba na nagpalit ng pangalan kasi mababasa ng kapamilya nila, tapos hindi pa sila handa na ilabas yung mga karanasan na yan sa family members. So, yan. Tapos ito ay more pointedly tungkol ulit sa women and queer, pero mas politicized na yung talk, hindi lang comics, kundi all of publishing na. Tapos ito, food security, mga peasant, mga farmers, at yung ngayon alam na ng maraming tao yung pagigipit sa kanila na ginagawa sa ng gobyerno. So pinag-usapan niya mga 2 years ago, I think, sa Maginhawa. Tapos ito ay mas overall tungkol sa nung time na in denial pa rin yung gobyerno na marami silang pinapatay sa EJK. So pinag-usapan ko ano yung mga pwedeng paraan para mailabas yung impormasyon na yun via small press. So nagkaroon ng event sa Cubao Shoe Expo. Nung panahon na to, marami na kaming organizer, hindi lang, wala, yung core dati niyan, kaming dalawa lang nakasama ko dun sa, pangalan na grupo namin na Youth and Beauty Brigade. So kahit ako ay 37 na, tapos yung kasama ko, nasa early 40s niya, yun pa rin ang pangalan namin. Kasi we're still beautiful and relevant and youthful in philosophy and politics. Tapos yung isa dun sa mga kasama ng co-organizer doon ng Studio Soup Library, isa silang zine library sa Cubao Shoe Expo. So pagpunta kayo doon, di ba horseshoe yung shape nun, nandun sila sa nandun sa gitna ng horseshoe na yan, malapit sa Belinis. So pag pumasok kayo doon, second floor yung unit nila, yan, pwede kayo bumili ng zines, tapos wall-to-wall, bookshelves, zines, pwede kayo umupo doon magbasa. So nagkaroon ng nag-lecture ako doon tungkol sa protest comics for 3 hours. Naganda ako ng 800 slides for that. So ito, 40 slides lang ito, so don't worry. So ayan, so protest comics. So nagkaroon ng ganun. So ito yung isa sa mga recent na ginawa namin noong May. Kasamaralita tungkol sa salamat, tungkol sa naman panggigipit naman ng gobyerno sa urban poor. Yung pagbebenta ng lupa ng NHA, National Housing, sa maraming mga big businesses, big developers tulad ng Ayala. Binibenta yung lupa na dapat din i-develop para sa housing, pero binibenta para maging casino, binibenta para maging mall. So yung Trinoma, ganon. Yung Vertis North ay ganon. So before you know it, may ginagawa silang solar doon, so magkakaroon ng casino sa harap ng Pisay. So enjoy ang Pisay, marami silang stipend doon. So tungkol to doon sa ginagawa na yun ng gobyerno. So yung nangyayari ay parang ganito, magagather kami ng mga tao, may mga practitioners doon na small press, tapos may mga tao doon na apektado ng mga ng mga issue na yan. Yung concept na nakita ko lang to early this year, information district. So yung konsepto niya ay gusto nila Amerikano yung nag-isip, so para sa kanila kailangan suportado ng gobyerno. Pero yung hindi yun posible sa atin. Pero yung konsepto ay tulad ng maraming lugar sa maraming syudad, maraming lungsod sa mundo. Meron siyang market district, may fashion district, may industrial district, ganyan. Tapos gusto naman nila merong informational district. Information district kung saan may free exchange ng ideas na nangyayari, mga ideas na typically relevant para sa community na yan. So hindi siya kailangan na bagay na binibenta kasi yung information pwedeng tulad nito laway pagsasalita. So yung concept kasi niya ay dahil sa social media, dahil sa internet, nagkaroon na ng maraming mga lugar kung saan kahit magandang paraan siya to disseminate information, problema masyado siyang magandang paraan to disseminate information. So hindi na na-veto ng maayos, hindi na-vet na maayos sa information na yan. So nagkakaroon ng mga lugar kung saan ang tawag nila doon ay media deserts. So hindi siya kakulangan ng media, kundi kakulangan ng kalidad ng media na yan. So madalas ay inaccurate to. Madalas ay may agenda to na nataliwas dun sa sa kalagayan, sa hanap buhay mo, sa kalagayan mo, etc. etc. So ito ay magiging lugar kung saan yung mga tao na concerned dun sa issue na yan ay magpapalitan ng impormasyon, magtutulungan basically para gawa ng solusyon yung problema na kinakaharapan nila. So naisip namin na i-project na yung programa namin dun sa direction na yan. So magiging community building tool siya. So basically from yung 16 na sellers na inuumpisa through the years, 9 years na, ay dumami, lumawak, nationwide na siya, more or less, nationwide. So ang focus talaga ay community building na, hindi market building, kundi tao, na yung impormasyon hindi binibenta necessarily, pero syempre kasama naman yan kasi naglabas ka ng pera for production, pero may exchange. So madalas may mga, may bartering na nangyayari, na not necessarily kung ano yung presyo nito, yun yung presyo nun, kundi yung information na ay magkasing halaga sila. So hanggang ngayon, yung BLTX ay libre para sa mga tao, cheap para dun sa sellers. So yung ngayon na inorganize namin, 500 pesos pa rin yung mesa. Tapos walang institutional support. So walang from Ayala or anything na ganyan. Never be held in institutional places. Pero ginawa namin yung isa sa Lopez Museum, so institutional place yan. Pero ang bait niyang kausap ko, so nakakita ko masyado. Pero maganda yung nangyari doon, ang daming sellers, daming pumunta. Tapos yun yung naging all ages, Kasi umaga, normally nangyaring event ng gabi. Ito nangyari ng parang 9 o'clock in the morning till 5 o'clock in the evening. So may mga tao doon pumunta na kasama yung mga anak nila. So walang beer doon. So galit na galit yung iba, pero family place, okay lang yan. Tapos yun, always partner with grassroots organizations doon sa local na yun, sa community. Na syempre ang trajectory ay labanan ng pasismo at oppression na ginagawa ng maraming oppressors sa tao. So yan na yung naging tutok namin. Ito yung mga organizers sa Baguio. Wala silang mga picture pero Pedantic Pedestrians ang pangalan ng grupo. Tapos ito yung sa Naga naman. Tapos ito yung sa CDO at sa CDO at sa Davao. Tapos nandiyan na rin yung Gantala Press, kasama na rin namin na nag-organize isang feminist na printing, na publishing. Tapos ito yung Studio Soup, yung lugar na yan. So yan kami, kasama na rin ng ilang mga grupo tulad ng Magpies Press, isang UPLB na arts na community. Saka yung Studio Soup na tao. Tapos ito yung event namin sa Sabado, dahil dun sa nangyaring maraming pagbubulgar tungkol sa violence against women, sa sexual harassment na nangyayari sa literary production dito, sa workshops, sa mga panel, mga ganito. So may forum kami sa Sabado. So punta kayo, 2 to 5 p.m., maharap naman sa Facebook yung information na yan. So umiimik umaalma, resisting the cultural reproduction of violence against women. Tapos ito sa Davao, si Angelici, yung organizer namin sa Davao, nahihirapan ng kaunti kasi may nag-file sa kanya ng libel kasi may nag-whistleblow siya tungkol sa isang rapist sa isang workshop. So yan ang hinaharap namin ngayon with she. Tapos ito yung sa Naga naman. Tapos ito yung dito sa mangyari sa Sikat. So kung pumunta kayo sa may Scout Circle, sa Memorato, doon sa may Belo na building, yung Belo Clinic, doon kami sa likod ng building na yun mangyayaring event. So may forum 4 to 7 tungkol sa Independent Artists Congress. So all the mga art activism groups ngayon na medyo makulit about connecting with people sa social media. So magkakaroon ng talk doon basically kung paano i-activate yung lahat ng mga tao na pupunta doon at maging art activist basically. Tapos 4 to 7 yan. Tapos 7 o'clock, hindi mabibilang na maayos pero 88 na yan. Tapos may dalawa pa akong ipapasok mamaya. So 90 sellers yung pupunta na sa December 14 pala. Maling petsa pa sinabi ko yan. December 14, Sabado. So yun na lang muna kung may tanong mamaya na lang. Salamat.
Good afternoon. I'm Paolo Herras, the co-founder and president of Komiket, the Filipino Comics and Art Market. And thank you to NBDB and to NIDA for having me here today, and to my fellow co-presenters. So, Komiket, or the Filipino Comics and Art Market, has been around since 2015. So, we still get questions kung buhay pa yung comics, ano yung itsura ng comics ngayon, and that's also a sign that we still haven't accomplished our job, and that we're still working towards that goal wherein a lot of people would know about Filipino comics. Okay, sorry. Can we go back? Okay. So, who are the people in the comics community? Okay, there is a Facebook group called Indie Comics Manila that is only for comics creators. So if you have released a comic book, you get invited to the Facebook group. And as of today, there are around 750 creators. So if there is such a thing as a community, that would be the comics community. It's not everyone, but most of the people are there. So before 2015, before Komiket came around, there were very few opportunities for local comics creators to share their work. There was actually just 2 publishers, and one of them is Nida Ramirez, of Visprint Inc., who is one of the champions of local comics. And the other one was Black Ink, the Filipino manga arm of Precious Romances. It's only after a while, or on that same year, in 2015, where Adarna House activated their comics arm called Anino Comics. There were very few readers, and by that, on average, the local Comic-Con would only have around 2,000 to 2,500 attendees, and it hasn't increased until recently. Umabot na sila ng 3,000. The sales are relatively low, so it would be high costs for printing, for table booths, and that it was during a time when print is dying. So you have a lot of newspapers, publishers closing shops during the time of 2015 and around that time. So that's when a group of comics creators like me and some friends put up the Komiket to provide more spaces for comics creators to sell their work. The attitude or the behavior of comics creators is that a lot of us wouldn't go out into the open and search for spaces to sell our work, because we are always afraid that we wouldn't earn it back. So it was that critical in terms of spaces. So when we envisioned what the Komiket's job would be, it would be to nurture and grow the local comics community. And by putting up local comics and art markets to provide opportunities for creators to sell their work. To discover new creators, we put up comic book creators workshops. We held annual Komiket Awards, wherein the best comics, best illustrator, best writer, and best student comics would be given 5,000 peso comic starter grants. So it's like an NCCA grant. It's not cold cash, so that it won't go to beer or food, but it would be a printing fund for the next work. So the whole objective is to sustain these artists' work. And Komiket Talks for a closer reader-creator relationship. And then we started to activate as a publisher in 2017, where we published Comics Cum Laude, which was a compilation of student comics done winners or finalists of the Komiket Awards. And then we had published annual comic book anthologies like Community, which the objective is to get different creators from who started producing comics at different periods, from the 90s, 2000s, and so forth. So that's how we've been working since 2015. So this is us, the original organizers on top. And we would organize our events at Center's Elements because it was an accessible and affordable venue. And that was the objective of Komiket, that usually the other comic conventions would be in Bayanihan Center, which is a little bit far off, and it would be a little bit difficult to go to. So we wanted to be accessible, so we chose a venue that was just along EDSA and by an MRT station. And that was actually our first event in April 2015. It's really just tables where creators put their works and sell their items. So the top left was the Comic Book Creators Workshop, and you see Adam David at the lower left with his friends in the Anino group, Anino Comics. So this is a panoramic view of the Komikets. And on average, we started out with 2,500 attendees. And last October 2019, we grew to 6,500. So we had around In April 2015, we started with 40 tables, that's 100 creators, and 1,500 attendees. And we maximized the center's elements with 190 tables. That's actually 616 creators and 6,500 attendees. The 580 and 55 was last year, February. So when this was made, it was done before the October event. But yeah, we're very lucky that we grew. And we also expanded from Center's Elements every Feb and October. We had Komiket South in Las Piñas, Komiket Cavite in Dasmariñas, SM Dasmariñas. We co-organized events with Cebu Lit Fest. So we're in Cebu once a year since 2017. And we have Komiket Makati working with Fringe Manila. And in BGC, we partnered with Fully Booked. And in 5 years, we put up 23 art markets in 6 communities or 6 cities, held 6 comic book creators workshops, discovered 130 new creators, gave away 18 Komiket awards and 17 Comic Starter grants, and published 4 comic book anthologies featuring 75 creators and earning 1 National Book Award nomination. So yay! So this was our year this year. So we usually start on Feb, and then Feb and October are our main events, and then we go to different communities on the other parts of the year. So this is how it looks in Komiket Cavite and Komiket South in SM South Mall. The secret of why we're able to expand is because these venues, we get them for free. And if they weren't free, then we wouldn't be able to put it up. But that's how we are able to find spaces. And here in Cebu and in Makati, okay, and the workshops, which are held once a year. So we partner with Fully Booked. And here are some samples of the Komiket Awards. Okay, and the Komiket Talks. So we also, whenever we get more, as we grow, we get to give more. And we started out with free catalogs in our first event, where all of the creators would compile all of the covers of new titles so that the attendees can purchase the new titles. However, the insight was that people weren't reading the catalogs when they got to the venue. Naging souvenir siya. So, and we were pricing our tickets at 50 pesos per head, just so that will ward off the lurkers. Kasi sila yung nagnanakaw. Yun yung insight sa amin. So, kasi and then we upgraded by publishing a comic book anthology called Community, wherein we gave honorariums to all of the creators who were part of it. And we gave away 2,000 copies for free to the first 2,000 attendees of the Komiket starting last October. And that's how we grew from 2,500 to 5,000 to 5,500 to 6,000. And as of last May, when we opened our registration, exhibitor registration, we had to close as early as mid-June. And that was the first time that we had over 440 table applications for only 190 tables. So that also prompted us to start looking for a bigger venue and grow our database also. So during this survey, we also asked our exhibitors what was relevant to our community. And that was, of course, the art market spaces, so that they could sell their work, publishing, and opportunities for collaborations and other events. And what more would they like Komiket to do? So it's really more art markets, having our own space, more workshops, printing services, but that's not our core competency, and creative pitches. So the plan was also to look for other spaces. So we are currently in talks with people from Pampanga, Iloilo, Davao, and Cagayan de Oro. So we usually compute the costs because even our Cebu event, that's the one event that we have wherein Komiket loses money. And that's okay because as long as we're able to get the comic books in Cebu, in Visayas area, that was already the win for us. But that's why we're very careful when we look at spaces outside Metro Manila. So our initial goal, our initial challenge was to grow creators and help build the community, which I think we kind of did. And we, as Adam's presentation kanina, we aren't alone in building this. But the current challenge is to growing the readership or help sustaining the community. Now, pinakita ni Ms. Tinette yung stats, and even the NBDB has a survey of readership. And something doesn't match, and that's low readership because a best-selling book would be around 1,500 copies, and for us it takes a long time to sell that 1,500. So we were wondering, where are all the readers? Okay, so sorry for the cough. Okay. So our captured market are existing Filipino readers of local books and comics. So these are Filipino readers who like to read local or who are open to reading local. But there's a bigger market, which are Filipino readers who only read foreign books. And that's the potential for growth. So how do we activate that? Now, this scenario was something similar to how I experienced indie films back in the late 90s and early 2000s. It's only when Cinemalaya, Cinema Manila, Cinema One put up their own festivals to produce more films. And that's the strategy that Komiket plans to do for 2020. And the objective is to publish world-class Filipino comics, but basically similarly to what NIDA is doing for Visprint. Invite an international jury, invite international creators and publishers, and film and TV animation producers, toy makers, and merchandisers. And we'll invite them to this event, which we call the Pick-Off, or the first Philippine International Comics Festival. So we're planning it in June 2020. The dates aren't fixed yet because we're still looking for the best venue possible. We're still looking for that venue, but we're planning it in June so that it's in between the Feb and October Komikets. And we had a call for entries last April, May, and we received 94 entries. 82 came from Manila, 29 from Luzon. The average age of the creator is 29 years old, 17 as the youngest, 79 as the eldest. 79 were male, 38 were female. The most popular genre was fantasy. More than superhero, it was fantasy. Horror, supernatural, historical or alternate Philippines, which is a genre of its own. And slice of life, more than romance. And then sci-fi. And then comedy was surprisingly just one. And we opened up already call for entries for 2020. So we narrowed it down to the 18, where we did an interview, and we found our top 10. Oops, can you finish the video? we didn't find 10, we found 11. So we have something that was of diverse genres. One could be like slice of life, like Doobie-Doo asks, which is a mom who discovers her child has high-functioning autism. And something that is pre-colonial seafaring Moro pirates, done by J. Ignacio and Alex Nino, a 1950s creator and also an Eisner nominee. So we have something that is also diverse in age. Mai Entico, who's doing My Name is Agong, is I think a first-year, second-year student at the College of St. Benilde. So we have very diverse themes and diverse art styles also. So the festival, just to quicken this up, there will be an official selection of the 11, an independent section of your favorite indie creators, and an international section, which we hope to attract some comics creator from Southeast Asia, and hold the Komiket Awards there. The best comics will receive 150,000 pesos. And then the call for entries for 2021. So if you can imagine that those 11 titles times 2,000 copies per title, that's around 22,000 books. So where will we sell those books? So that's the timeline for the pick-off. So once we launch it in the pick-off, next slide, please. During the festival, we'll also have not just the book launches and the Komiket Awards, but curated talks, a project market for comics pitching, and business matching meetings with film and TV producers, because that's also another venue for creators to earn from their work. So our roadshow calendar from June at the Pick-Off, Cebu Lit Fest in July, Asia Pop Comic Con if they're still alive next year. MIBF, hello Tinette, we hope to get a booth at meron na kami ibebenta because we started there. I started with Meganon Comics in 2014. We were the little booth that could because we were a small booth. We were very nervous about getting a booth because it was way above our capacity nung una. But when we spoke with Tinette and Miss Bernadette, I just asked her one thing. And out of lahat ba ng sumali sa MIBF na ibabalik ba yung pera nila? And she said, off the record, yes. So on the record na yun ngayon. So that was one thing. And we did. And that's how we called our booth Comic-Con though, because our agenda was to drive in more attendees at Comic-Con, and that was the time wherein from 2,500 attendees naging 3,000 yung attendees ng Comic-Con. It also helped that NBDB held their Philippine Literary Festival the day before, so we were also there. We had a booth in that event, and we also did flyering for Comic-Con. And that's how much we do love our Filipino comics. So after September, we have our regular Comic at QC, and then Comic-Con Grande in November, and then we have a Comic at Christmas in December, and then so on and so forth. So the events that we put up, that's where we plan to sell our titles for pick-off. And we needed a house. The Comiket, the reason why we've been able to go as far as we could is that we didn't have overhead. We didn't have an actual space to pay for overhead. We didn't have employees. So because now of our plans for upgrade next year, we finally had our first office, our first headquarters called the Secret HQ. It's in Poblacion, Makati, wherein we have a co-creator space, a co-working space that doubles as a workshop area. And we have our own comic book store where everybody can buy local comics. So we're launching this next week, Tuesday. It's right behind the midget boxing, if you're familiar with P. Burgos in Poblacion. So the Red Light District. So we're right behind it. Kung gumigimik kayo sa poblasyon, we're right behind also Z Hostel. So good. So I know I should have started with Z Hostel, but mas iconic yung midget boxing. So yun. So that's our bookshelves, our co-working spaces. Okay. So that's our address. And please like us on Facebook and Instagram and Twitter. Now one more back. Okay. Next slide, please. Patapos na to. So the lessons learned, we've seen this. Everybody wants to earn money, and that's true. But those that really, truly earns are usually purpose-driven providers and not just sellers. It's not enough anymore to have a good book in hand. The book has to have a purpose, has to serve a purpose, and that's the titles that go 2, 3, 10 steps ahead. And right now, our markets, well, for Komiket, but I think it's also aligned with Tinette's and Adam's markets, is that people buy purpose, not just products. So kung walang purpose yung book, you better find it kasi that's what will sell it. People remember the experience, not how much they spend. So if keeping our attendees happy, keeping our exhibitors happy, that's the reason why we grew the Komiket. There are other events that people think na it's comics, and there are a lot of people that would love comics, especially with the Marvel Avengers and all that. But we've seen other events come and go because it wasn't purpose-driven. It wasn't pro-community. It wasn't serving the community that it wanted to benefit or earn from. And those are the events that kind of fizzled out. We also collaborate and we don't dictate. So the type of content, for as long as it doesn't steal, doesn't get drawings from the internet and tracing them, etc. As long as you don't do that, we are still okay. Fan art for us is still okay as long as it's your original version of it. Until the time that we can say that we are zero fan art and it's all original artworks. Sustainability is achieved when you have your own unique purpose. And just to end this with a shameless plug, and thank you for bearing with me. I'm usually not this low energy, but our next Komiket event is on Feb 8 and 9, 2020, here at SM Megamall Megatrade Hall 2. As mentioned a while ago, that we already outgrew Centris, and to help more creators, when we have more, we get to do more. So we are booking, or we booked already our Feb 8 and 9 Megamall Komiket in Megamall. So our next event after is March 7 and 8 in SM Dasmariñas, May 2 and 3 in SM South Mall. The June 12 to 14 is still pegged at that date for pickoff. And then we hit Cebu in July and hold the Comic Book Creators Workshop in August. Then we're back in Centris in October and December. So that's it. And thank you.
Okay, thank you very much to all our speakers. I, for one, have learned so much. I'm very thankful, Ma'am Tinette, for the stats of the latest MIBF. Yes, it did reflect on, I think it reflected on everybody's sales during that time. Sa Visprint alone, we doubled our sale from last year for this year's MIBF. Tapos, of course, the market for BLTX is also a different one. And it's very good to know that it's really growing and growing fast. Can I just throw in the first question? Ayun, okay lang? Ayun, so may trend tayo that, the three organization is continuous yung paglaki ng fairs under your leadership. What are your future plans for this continuous growth? For example, MIBF, do you plan on doing a regional MIBF version, or parang Cebu International Book Fair or a Davao International Book Fair. Kasi we get that a lot from na feedback from the readers na lagi na lang nasa Manila yung MIBF na kailangan pa nila bumiyahe at pumunta. Siguro, we start with that, Ms. Tinette.
Okay, so actually we did regional events before. However, honestly, we lose a lot of money. But then again, we realize we have to gamble again. So this February, also, we're gonna go to Davao, Abriza Mall, February 27, 28 to March 1. So it's a small book fair for about 25 exhibitors only. Bernadette brought the fact sheets, so those interested can get them from her. And we also plan to, we tied up with some publishers already, no? We're gonna have educational seminars as well to reach more markets. Because I mentioned earlier, gone are the days where you just have a book on your shelf and you wait for people to sell. You have to go out and actively engage your market for you to sell.
That's true. Sa amin naman, maghanap ng espasyo na mas permanent na physical. Kasi mahalaga din sa ginagawa namin yung physical presence ng mga tao. Bukod dun sa napaka-physical ng paggawa mismo ng mga binibenta. Yung interaction, yung community building ay nangyayari talaga sa labas ng internet. Hindi enough na nagne-networking ka lang, malay mo ba na kinakatfish ka na pala nung some tao ni Bato or something online. Yan. So kailangan namin ng physical talaga na lugar kung saan pwedeng gumawa ng monthly na mga talks, mga ganito, para gawa ng paraan kung paano pwede patalsikin si Duterte, Bongo, Bato, ganun. So yun yung long view na ginagawa namin ng paraan sana via art activism, vandalizing, ganyan.
So our goal starting next year would be maintaining our secret headquarters. And that's where we will have workshops for creators or for even startup illustrators, for crafting workshops, illustration workshops, also personal development workshops, because a lot of our creators are also going through a lot of mental health issues. So that's one. So art as healing as that. And a last one, the creative entrepreneurship track, which is more on financial literacy. Because a lot of, I don't know, like siguro people my age, we weren't, which is tayo more or less, diba? So we weren't trained to be entrepreneurs. It wasn't part of our curriculum to have, to be educated on on earning money. It was more about being a worker. So ako, I'm a comparative lit major, and hanggang math 1 lang tinuro sa amin. Okay? Which is not even algebra. So, yun. So, that while we continue to hone and develop our interested creators or illustrators who'd like to grow their skills, we also have now by publishing at the Pick-Off, we already have something to show outside the borders of the Philippines. So we are trying to target also the Frankfurt Book Fair, other spots we're in, and collaborating with other organizers within the region to have spaces in each other's events also. So it's not, and while doing that, it's also maintaining what we currently have. Of course, we always have to nurture what we currently have, because that one is like a gift, which it's our responsibility then. So that's it.
Other questions?
Hi, Anthony mula sa National Book Development Board. Yung tanong ko ay para kay Ms. Tinette sa MIBF. Last year kasi meron tayong 10-day, 24-hour remainder book fair market na pumasok at nagkaroon dito sa Metro Manila, Davao and Cebu Oh,
Ano ngayon sa Davao?
Pampanga this year. So we had a 10-day, 24-hour remainder book market starting 2018. So the question is, has this affected the local book fair market, specifically the MIBF revenues?
I think our numbers will show that from last year, we had about 120,000 fair visitors. Now we have about 160,000. So, hindi na masama yun, di ba? And, iba kasi yung kanila. Theirs is purely selling. Our book fair is different in the sense that we also have other events, educational events, author signings, sometimes just like showbiz events, anything that will sell the book. We even have cooking demos. So whatever topic your book has and you want to sell it, we can work together so you can sell it. And most of the time, our books, I think the publishers will tell you, our books are new. They're not remainder books. Although there are some remainder books. So I guess that's the big difference. And our crowd is really the buying crowd. Like we have schools come in, and I'll just find out that, you know, they look so simple, but yung bag na dala nila, 1 million pala yun. Cash. Kasi daw pag when they go to a bookstore and they pay in cash, the discount is bigger. So, simple lang sila. Marami sila doon. Pero yung dalawa sila, ganon. Yung bag nila, 1 million yun. Mahigit. And then every day, nandun sila. 1 million ng 1 million ang dala nila. So, I guess that should tell you that maybe others are, but by and large, I think the publishers are not. Thank you. Yung mga nakangiti kasi sila yung mga, sa totoo lang, you'll hear, no? Pag second day ng book fair, maririnig mo, alam mo, nabawi na namin participation fee namin. Maraming ganun. So, gaya nila.
This is a question for Sir Herras regarding the Komiket. I just wanted to know, how do you make sure of the authenticity of the products of the creators you've accepted in the venue for the Komiket? Kasi I went to one before, like 2 years ago, and then may isang booth doon. I think that was High Time ng Bear na product na parang series na sikat, and I saw na parang nagbebenta siya ng parang official art or ng ganung series. And I want to know, how do you make sure yung authentic talaga? Kasi I know indie is like your own creation, and even if hindi siya own creation, at least a fan art siya nagawa mo. And how do you make sure of that? And if possible, can you cite an example na parang may nahuli kayong ganon, and how did you address that po?
Okay, so the Komiket, the limitation of Komiket is that we're only 6 people. That's the truth. We're only 6 people, and we can only do so much. And we do have a few volunteers but they're not organizers. They're more of the creatives who help us with the collaterals. So we do highly encourage. In fact, it's part of the rules. But there will always be that exhibitor na pasaway, that rogue exhibitor. When it gets reported, we address it on the spot. And that's as best as we can do for now. Because fan art, for us, it's still acceptable to a certain degree as long as hindi siya outright pinupul. Because at the end of the day, that involves a lot of karma. When you steal from somebody, you will also be stolen from. So, and that's unavoidable. So we do our best, but of course, meron pa rin makakalusot.
Thank you. Did you call me red hair mama? Bakit mama? Anyway, Hi, I think I asked this of Paolo before, but then I just wanted to reiterate and maybe also ask this question of Adam because you guys are producing comics. And I think Paolo, you raised a question of like, where are the readers? So I noticed that a lot of, or most of the comics are actually for the adult market, if I'm not mistaken, instead of the children's market. So I wanted to find out, like, do you have any plans or are any events underway that you're also targeting or developing comics for the children's market? Because I think you guys read an article from Publishers Weekly that the #1 selling comics actually last year is Dogman. So it is not any of the, far and away, it's not any of the superhero comics or any of the realistic comics, it's the middle grade comics. So I was wondering if we're going to expect more coming from Filipino creators.
Thank you, Honey. Okay, so it's only recently where we activated as a publisher because it was only recently where we activated as a publisher. And we, as much as we wanted to provide space for everyone, we could only publish 10. But because there were 3 or 4 in a black and white, okay, kaya yung 11. So we have different genres, like, and including YNA. I think we have 3 or 4 that would fit perfectly in the YNA. Like The Ticking Stone, which is about a little boy who finds a stone that ticks, tapos nalulok niya, naging tick-tick, kaya ticking stone. So we also have another one called Aswanghai, which you can already anticipate. It's a high school for the aswang. Little Wolf is about a little wolf who is forced to grow up. So we already have creators who love that genre and who create in that genre. And one thing that Komiket learned over the years is that we don't want to force people to create comic books or graphic novels that they don't want to create because it takes so much of their time. As a writer, it takes me like a week, 2 weeks to come up with a complete plot line. Just plot, okay? And for the entire script depends on the level of difficulty, like a month or 2. But it takes an illustrator at least 2 months to a year or a year and a half to produce a comic book of 24 pages, 48 pages, 144 pages, etc. So that's why the comic books that you see, these are the lives of the creators that nabinuhos nila sa papel. That's why, as much as possible, that's the reason why we sold the comic books, not as comics, but as affordable art. Because supposedly, if the comic book is very well crafted, you have wonderful illustrations. Now, if the story is also well crafted, then that's what induces loyalty, that readers will come back and buy more. So we're very happy to report that there are more authors who are pursuing the adult child, which is what we call the comics for all ages, the adult child readers, or the adults who refuse to grow up, parang ganun. And there are more of those. And we're also happy to also report that, like with Adam's group and BLTX, there are also more creators that also go the path of socially relevant issues. In the same way that before Komiket started, the local Comic-Con was more on just 4 genres. And Adam can correct me if I'm wrong. It's either superhero or action, supernatural or horror, humor, and Filipino manga. That is all just those 4 genres, majorly. That's already 95% predominantly straight male. There was very few female creators, like 1 or 2. And I was working with one, and that's Tepay Pascual. And when Komiket started, that's when we had more student creators, more female creators, more LGBT creators. That's why we published the Comics Cum Laude. It documented the time where in 2015, when storytelling started to change. it became more personal, more slice of life. You had LGBT stories, you had mental health, self-care, mental health issues, or also known as self-care stories. And you still had you had a lot of romances also. And you still had some that did superheroes and supernatural and humor pa rin. But the storytelling, the voices grew. So that's for Komiket.
Well, mostly speaking for myself, na wala pang kinalaman yung mga kasama ko tungkol dito. Yung day job ko ay teacher ng comics. So, comics writing and just pretty much comic book making sa Makiling, so Philippine High School for the Arts, saka sa PUP. Tapos in between, nagtuturo ako sa STEPS, outdoor play group para sa mga kids and young adults na nasa autism spectrum. So, yeah. So, nagtuturo ako ng comic book making and everything na basta creative writing. Pero majority ay comics yung gustong gawin ng mga bata. So, yung mga edad niya na nasa Makiling, mga nasa 14, 15, hanggang siguro 16, 17, ganyan. Tapos, yung mga kids nasa steps 18 to 24. Sa PUP, matatanda na. So, hindi sila doon, kasama doon. Pero yung mga ginagawa nila, for the most part, ay generally para rin dun sa sarili nilang ka-age group. So, kids and young adults. So, yung ginagawa ko ay para matulak lang sila. Para may kinalaman pa ni BLTX. Ay sinasabihan ko sila na may yung mga project nila basically required. Yung mga requirement nila ay mag-participate dun sa event. So, yung mesa ko na ako yung magtatao ay hopefully ang laman ay majority mga trabaho ng estudyante ko. So, yung ako personally gumagawa rin ako ng mga comics, ang tendency ko ngayon ay mga young adult pero nakaset sa 90s. So mga hipster to na young adults na yung concern pupunta sa concert ng The Dawn pero wala silang ticket. So paano sila kuha ng ticket? Yung isa nasa filmmaking workshop. Tapos mag-aaway sila so paano sila magiging magkabate para magawa yung pelikulang kailangan nila gawin. So ganun. Tapos, yung age group ng mga characters ay 13, 16, ganyan. So So more personal pa yung pag-address dun sa mga bagay na yan. Wala pa dun sa level, na institutional level na tipong yung mga kasama ko sa Studio Soup ay yun rin yung gagawin. Pero, so yun, more educator talaga na level yung pag-address nun. So yan. Salamat sa tanong. Gandang tanong.
Good afternoon, everyone. So, I'm a librarian by trade. And I was wondering, specifically for kay Sir David, and if there has been some movement collaborating with maybe public libraries, because I saw the description of the information district, and it's actually almost synonymous to what ideally should be what the public library does. So, maybe, has there been some movements to that, or maybe ideas about that?
Kung public library lang pag-uusapan, kung nakapunta ka na sa local public library niyo, medyo, sagwain. As in, parang tipong, I think, ang takbo lang ay, umaasa lang sila sa donation for the most part, I think. So, kung meron kayong mayaman dyan na parang siguro dating kasyendero na maraming libro, may library doon, namatay sila yung mga, yung mga descendants na hindi alam kung ano gagawin sa mga libro. So parang binibigay na lang sa barangay. Kasi ganun yung mga nangyayari. So pumunta ako recently sa Quezon City Public Library. So malaking public library to. 4 floors. Yung floor lang doon na maraming libro ay yung first floor. Second floor, mga conference rooms. Tapos yung taas niya ay kapihan. So totally, tipong, di ba kung hatiin mo sa it's like 30% lang ay para sa mga libro. Pag pumunta ka ba sa mga libro, siya talaga, as in tipong parang kinuha lang talaga sa book sale. So hindi, walang interest ang public libraries dun sa mga sa mga ginagawa namin, sa mga plano namin gawin. At may attempts naman to reach out. Ang merong interest ay mga zine library, mga small press libraries from other countries. May mga nagtatanong Tapos yung ano nga, yung ilan dito, may mga independent na bookstores, independent na meron ding library, parang yung setup ni na Paolo. Yung in theory na pwede ka rin bumili doon, pero pwede ka rin magbasa doon. So so yun yung may mga interest. So talagang siya, mga like-minded dun sa advocacy ng thing. At nga, kahit nga gawin mo siyang business, advocacy pa rin talaga siya kasi nga wala talaga masyadong, at least sa level namin na dun sa level pa rin talaga ng creator, wala talaga masyadong pera, walang pera na kukuha na mula dito sa pagsusulat, mula sa publishing. Talagang ginagawa mo yun in between everything else. So, nasuportahan ng day job mo yung thing na to. Kahit conceivably, in theory, dapat ito ay isa sa mga medyo dapat maging mas lucrative siya. Pero hindi lang talaga masusuportahan niya ng ekonomiya natin, basically. So, kunyari, mga pinagmamalaki so halimbawa lang, yung mga pinagmamalaki na yung 200,000 copies a week na mga comics ng 1990s na nabebenta. Yung every time ni-invoke yun ng mga matatanda na komikero, hindi nila binabanggit na kaya nakakabenta ng ganun karami yung mga publisher kasi in-exploit nila yung mga artists, yung mga creators. Yung creators na hindi nila na babawi yung original art nila. Hindi sa kanila yung copyright ng trabaho nila, ganyan. Pero diba? Pero kasi may 200,000 copies, so may illusion na may yumayaman. May yumayaman nga, pero hindi yung creators yun. Karamihan ng creators dito, yung binanggit ng 79-year-old doon, yun yung edad na ng mga tao na nagtatrabaho na nung 70s, 80s, 90s dito. Tapos gumagawa pa rin sila kasi bukod dun sa yun talaga yung ginagawa nila at work for hire yung trabaho. Wala sila ibang alam gawin talaga na pwedeng pagkakitaan dun sa level na gusto nilang mangyari. Tapos nung prime ng talent nila, prime years nila, ang nakuha lang nila doon ay kapiranggot lang talaga. Ngayon, ang strange dyan kasi sa, di ba, siguro some person na hindi lang nag-math 1 kayang explain sa atin to. Pero yung may tendency na yung mga libro namin ngayon na 500 copies, 1,000 copies maybe, di ba? Ang print run na kailangang mabenta in 5 years or something na ganyan. Mas may nakuha kaming pera. Bukod dun sa amin na nanatili yung copyright ng mga trabaho na yan, sa amin na nanatili yung original art, kung digital man yan or physical, sa amin pa rin yun. Pero may royalties, kasi yung publishers ay mas nakakausap na tungkol dun. So may royalties kami nakukuha, may copies kami nakukuha ng libro na yan. Pwede namin ibenta yung original art para pagkakitaan pa namin yan, etc. etc. So hindi ko yata nasagot yung tanong niya.
Nasagot na po. Nasagot na po. Thank you po.
Okay. And then I just want to add what Adam said about creators' rights, because we don't practice that a lot, especially for a lot of publishers. That's why, not to make sip-sip with Nida, no, because Nida's already a good friend, di ko na kailangan gawin. But another example of why comics creators love Visprint and love Nida so much is because the contract is a pro-creators contract. Meaning to say the creators get to keep their rights. And that one, if you might think that is something that should have been, well, it's not. It's not practiced by all. And some own it in perpetuity. Some would pay per page, and that's it. Illustrators also of children's books, they're not considered as authors. So that's why they're paid as commissioned work. So they don't, unless some publishers do give royalties, so that's good. But that's also what we're trying to do. We're trying to give to educate the rights of creators. That's the goal of Pickoff, to educate the rights of creators, and also through our contracts also, which is, I think, the same as a Visprint contract, that the creators get to keep the rights, and then we get to teach them about how to sell their rights, meaning to say adaptation rights, translation rights, because there was a time with Kyra and with Adarna, we were sent to Kuala Lumpur for the KLTCC, which was, akala namin, so syempre ako, nagbebenta talaga kami ng per piece. So syempre, dala ako ng dalawang maleta ng mga libro. But it wasn't a place to sell copies. Okay, we had to learn to compute on the spot when we get inquiries for our books, and we realized that, we are the Filipino creatives, writers, authors, illustrators are extremely talented in comparison to our Southeast Asian counterparts. We are advanced in some, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we will still be advanced tomorrow. We still have an advantage in terms of language and skill. The closest country that comes to us in terms of illustration skills would be Indonesia, I think. But we're still ahead of the game with Thailand and Singapore, especially. Singapore has a lot of money, but they don't have a lot of talent. Please don't, please don't. Please don't quote me on that, because we're trying to form a relationship. Oh, naka-video pa diba? So, and that's the reason why we put a pick-off, because Thailand already took a claim on children's books. Singapore also, because it's the easiest to sell. And we all know that in the MIBF also, the most popular books or easiest to sell would be either religious books or children's books. That's why YA also. So we're hoping that in the Philippines, it would be graphic novels, because we have a lot, and we have a lot of creators who are ready to be purchased. Exploited. Sorry. But yun. So that's why if we're able to break the barrier of creator to a reader, because and I've noticed that whether you are a creator that sells his comic book for 50 pesos, 100 pesos, 500 pesos, or 1,000 pesos, because he is local, because he's Filipino, there is always that question in the reader's mind that, is this worth my 100 pesos, 150, 200, 250? So unless you are published by a National Book Award winner publisher, or you are accessible in National Bookstore, which we did try, but again, as what siguro all three of us can attest, we earn more through our events. We sell more books, we sell more titles in events. Why? Because creators are there, authors are there to do book signings, to meet and greet the authors. And that already adds value. So it's a lot of added value always. That's why when Ms. Tinette was saying that you should have your promo, you should have your event, mini event in your booth, it's because of that. And yun.
We have to wrap up our topic for today. Of course, we'd like to thank our speakers, Adam David, Paolo Herras, and Ms. Tinette Capistrano. If you have further other questions for them, you can ask them personally, diretso, as long as they're still here. I think they'll be very accommodating. For those who'd like to stay for the next session, it's about developing partnerships with publishers and institutions, share how developing partnerships generate more revenue and cut operational costs. Again, thank you to our speakers. Let's give them a round of applause.